was in the military, U.S. Army station at Fort Ord, so on the weekends I was in an Army Reserve unit, and on the weekends I got to go up to San Francisco pretty much from Monterey, California, and so I would get in on some of the new bands that were starting to happen there, and I met Bill Graham at the committee. He was a manager of the committee, which was a comedy club in North Beach area, and then there was another fellow, Chet Helms, who had the Family Dog and the Avalon Ballroom, and then Bill went on to do the Fillmore. I used to be able to go in on the sound checks at the Fillmore because I got to know Bill a bit. I'm kind of my world. I started working when I was 10 years old, and I always had about 3 jobs, so I had quite a bit of money saved when I was in the military there, so I could buy bottles of booze for Janis Joplin if I chose to. In fact, I met her at a place called the Anxious Asp in North Beach. David Freiberg from the Quicksilver Messenger Service invited me to go one Sunday afternoon because he knew I had extra cash, so I could buy a little marijuana if I chose to, or I could do whatever I wanted to do. And so I had a good time with Janis, and it opened me up kind of in a way to the strength of the music, and she was a very powerful individual as far as her character and then her taste in music. The blues was really very, very important. The background of the blues, of a blues artist, were then a lot of the younger people were listening to blues music and listening to, which is really, and also rhythm and blues. So it had a certain kind of feeling about it, a funky feeling, so to speak, and then a feeling where then a lot of people got ideas and started creating their own music based on the blues. And so there was a lot of really good early rock and roll music that was established here in the United States. And then obviously we go back now, we're 50 years back with the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and the British Invasion, where there was a great deal of music that came from England. And they also picked up on the blues. All the musicians in England, or a lot of the musicians, such as Eric Clapton or John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, there was a great deal of influence of all, like Jimi Hendrix. When Jimi Hendrix went to England to establish himself, there was a club called the Marquee Club, and one of the first times he played there, Pete Townsend from the Who and Eric and other people were there in the audience, and a lot of them just really went in the John and peed their pants. The best part of it all was Jimi Hendrix, because I'm from Seattle, Washington, and Jimi Hendrix went to Garfield High School. I was at Queen Anne High School, so I was well aware of Jimi. We had a place out in Aurora called the Spanish Castle. Jimi had a huge influence on the music, as far as rock and roll music and the new music. All Along the Watchtower has to be one of my favorite songs. The one I really enjoyed a lot was Jim Morrison of the Doors, because of his poetry. I've always been kind of more art-oriented in my choices of music, even though the music on the radio, the top 10 tunes, were tunes that I dealt with in order to have an audience and sell the tickets. But I was art-oriented, so I loved Jimmy's message and his poetry, and had the good fortune of meeting him in Los Angeles when things were just getting started in the early 60s. My whole career is really about 1962 to 1971. So the Doors, Bill Siddons, he was a surfer, and he became the road manager and kind of manager of the Doors. So I got along with him real well. So because of that, I had a lot of good kind of times with Jim Morrison and the Doors and the other band members. And I was able to work with them at least a half a dozen times, if not more. I was able to debut Elton John through my boss, Jerry Parencio, a well-chart artist. Jerry had cut a deal with Dick James Music Publishing Company, so we presented, our company presented Elton John at the Troubadour. Doug Weston, I remember he had to sign, we did a contract with him. He wanted to have a second time to have Elton play the Troubadour. people really, everybody that was in the business was in front of the Troubadour that night waiting to hear Elton, Irving Azoff, Geffen, David Geffen, and numerous other people. I'm using them because they went on to be very, very successful people in the music industry, those two gentlemen. And the other thing, but there were a lot of other ones. In fact, I think even James Guercio from Chicago was there that night, if I remember right. There was a lot of people. I got a kick out of this fact that everybody kind of came out of the closet, so to speak, to pay attention to Elton. And then Bernie Taupin was there, the songwriter, and it was really, really something. I mean, Elton was way, way ahead of his time. Within a month, he was playing arenas with 6,000 people. He didn't have to go play clubs. He didn't have to go play opera houses, or in the case of Seattle, the Moore Theater, which was around 1,500 seats, 2,000 seats. And he just went on to arenas and then on down to coliseums. And his career, obviously, today is quite unique. I think he's recently cut a deal with Steve Wynn in Las Vegas to do Vegas each year. And he's a very powerful individual. And then he's worked with James Guercio, who's a wonderful man who has a caribou ranch in Needleton, Colorado, and I'm going to be working with him and Eddie Winrick the next couple of years. And so I'm kind of getting back in the business, and I'm very excited about it. Really, I remember when they picked the name Led Zeppelin, and the British meant a lot to me also, obviously Jimmy being an American, even though he moved to Paris and died in Paris. The thing with Led Zeppelin, with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, just the most wonderful guys you could ever imagine, young guys when I was getting started with them. And they had a real good manager, Peter Grant, and Richard Cole was the road manager, and I got along real well with them. I always tried to give the bands extra money when I could, and that got me some mileage as far as with the people, the agents and the managers, and the people heard about that. And also the band members would say, well, Boyd gave us an extra $500. I always tried to give people an extra $500 when I could, because I had cash. I mean, I dealt in cash. I got involved with running a music publishing company in Los Angeles for Chartwell chart artists. Jerry Princio was my boss, and he went on to create Univision. He did the Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier fight in Madison Square Gardens, pay-per-view. Jack Kent Cook, who I believe owned the Staples then, or one of the Forum, I'm sorry, not the Staples, the Forum. They did pay-per-view. I think they did 463 million they collected on a fight. And I'll never forget at our office, Muhammad Ali walked in one morning. I was to get in my office. I'd be in my office. I'd work out at 7 in the morning in Century City, and then I'd be in my office listening to music to sign to the music publishing company. I'd always be there 7:30, 8 o'clock, because I knew Princio would walk in the door, and he'd always see my light on under my door. And a lot of the other agents didn't come in till 10. Well, at the time I was there that day, the Lum's Hot Dog people from Chicago walked in with Muhammad, and I knew I was in the right place at the right time, so I got to shake his hand and get a good look at him. And then, of course, I had my long hair, and he could tell I was in the music end of things, but he could give a shit. The Lum's Hot Dogs people, they were a pretty rough and tough outfit. And it was highly unusual that a white man would promote an event, a boxing event, so this was quite the deal.